Hey everybody, welcome back to the How Do Velogames podcast, where today it's just the three of us, Dan, Irfaan and I, talking about Gran Camino, which is the last race of the warm-up championship. Maybe once this is all kind of the dust has settled, maybe we'll do a bit of a review and we'll all come on and see how we've done at the end of
Review
it
how
all.
bad our picks were.
Yeah, I am regretting some of my picks, but I think I started off quite well. I mean, it's just gone progressively downhill. But Gran Camino today, the big thing is obviously that Jonas is in the race, and he is very expensive. It must be said, this is definitely a bit of a prelude for Pogačar at the Giro, I think.
Oh god.
So it's going to, yeah, no, I'm already not looking forward to the Giro and the Tour based upon the people who are going. It's going to be a nightmare, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Gran Camino. So I will share the screen and we'll have a look at some rider prices. So let's talk about Jonas. He is 30 credits. What do you guys think of that?
He's the first of four options at Jumbo because they're actually stacked.
Yeah.
And he is very expensive. But I think you can pick the three big Jumbo riders and he's still worth it because he's potentially going to win 3 stages out of 4.
I guess before I go any further, the stages, which I'll put up afterwards. So we've got a time trial to start that's 15 kilometers long, but it's not flat. It's definitely got some undulating terrain. It's very Jonas orientated, although Josh Tarling will certainly, it'll be one of those two who wins. I'd be quite surprised if it was somebody else.
Sorry, it screams diesel time trial because it has those 2 little lumps in it, but they're only like 5% or so. But it's that sort of, like you say, Sterling-esque cobbledy finish that is kind of, I'm not sure if Tarling's going to lose much time there, but it's not ideal.
Yeah. And then, so stage 2 is it's very undulating. I can't really see a single flat meter in this whole profile. There's 2 ascents of the Alto de San Pedro de Licora, which is 5.2k at 6%. It's not the steepest gradients, but it'll certainly be enough to make a bit of a selection. Stage 3 looks like a stage which would be very even hater orientated, but with like prime even hater. It's the one most likely to end in some sort of reduced sprint, just because it's probably the easiest profile of the whole race. And then stage 4 is the Queen stage, which finishes with a 7.1 kilometer, 8% climb. And there's also 2 other climbs preceding that. And that's really the one which has got Jonas written all over it. So the reason why Jonas is priced so expensively is because he could realistically win, like Dan says, 3 of the 4 stages. I'd say it's only really stage 3, which he doesn't have a realistic chance of winning unless he just goes solo. But I feel like we could talk about Jonas all like throughout this whole thing. But I think what we've summarized is that he is probably still worth it, because if he even wins 2 stages and then finishes on a top 3 of another stage, that's 400-ish points, and he wins the overall, that's 700 points plus the daily GC points, the KOM classification. He's going to be getting 800-ish points, so he's definitely going to be one of the highest scorers. But what about the other guys underneath him? Carlos Rodriguez has only raced once this year at Clásica Heian. David Gaudu did the Classic VAR, where of course he was beaten by his teammate Lenny Martinez, Paulus, Carapaz, Ita Brooks. I mean, we won't, spend loads of time talking about every single one of them, but of these second-tier favourites, which one are you liking the best, Dan?
So it's probably Carlos Rodriguez, purely because we know he can do a sort of GC TT. I don't like particularly how expensive Gaudu, Paulus, and Carapaz are. Martinez is a little bit of a step below because he's more in that pure climber category. But I mean, Paulus can do a good TT. I'm just not sure that he can stay up there in GC on that last day because of how hard those last 2 climbs are. Yeah, if I was going to leave Vingegaard out and pick anyone, it'd be Carlos Rodriguez.
Yeah, fair enough. And what about you, Irfan? Of the second tier favourites, who's your favourite of those? Who's the second favourite?
Second storage is it should be Carlos Rodriguez because
Mm-hmm.
he was okay at the Tour de France last year, and he has also a good TT, and he seems to have an okay team behind him. But it's going to be very hard to pick him and have Jonas together. So I'm more likely to pick someone like Lenny Martinez. I think he will provide the same thing as David Godu, but he's just cheaper and it just gives you more credits so that you can accommodate maybe 3 or 4 emergency leaders. Just because there's already so much we're spending on Jonas.
Yeah,
I like the Lenny Martinez option. I would also have like Carapaz.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure what EF is going with. They have Paulus here, they have Ikoti, they have Uran. So I'm not really sure what they're going with. And they might be trying like just throw anyone they will attack and whoever holds up is it.
Yeah. I think of the second tier favourites for me, I think my take is that why would you pick Godu when you could have Martinez? Because I think they're incredibly similar. Neither of them are going to do a good TT. We're just that's just going to happen. But Martinez, the fact that he did better in Classic VAR the other day just gives the edge to me. And he's also 4 credits cheaper. But Godu is kind of the more namestay. I mean, at the end of the day, Godu has finished on the podium of Paris-Nice just last year. You know, it's quite easy to overlook him, but like Dan says, at 20 credits, he's not going to be doing great in the TT. So therefore, he's doing well on just 2 stages, really. In theory,
because I think the stages suit Godu more because he's the punchier. I mean, even though they're not the same rider, obviously, but same-ish profile. But Martinez, I think, even when just looking at them, he's much smaller. I don't think he's as punchy. So Godu probably could finish better in those potentially reduced bunch sprints. For what they are going to be of bunch sprints anyway. With his sort of Liège, which is kind of what I think Paulus is going to do well there as well, because Paulus can do a good TT, and then he'll probably be all right on 2 and 3 with those. Because stage 2 is kind of like a Paris-Nice final stage day where you often get like a Soren Kragh Andersen or someone up in those stages because they're 5k 5% climbs. They're not that hard. I'm none of those. If Vingegaard wasn't there, I'd really struggle to pick which one of them because it could be a lottery, to be honest.
Yeah, it is definitely a bit of a lottery. I mean, even Carapaz is known for kind of getting up there in some sprints. I think I remember, I want to say it was Dauphiné last year. I think he was, like top 3 in a sprint there behind like Laporte and Tesfatsion or something like that. I don't know.
You're definitely the most Alaphilippe of those GC guys.
Yeah, he's a hard, like, all these second tier favourites. I really think that it's very unuseful for the people who are listening, but you can really just throw a blanket over all of them. You could really pick any of them and give good reasoning for it. You could argue Carlos Rodriguez is the best TT of them. You could say that Paulus is sort of them all, maybe the most well-rounded in terms of his ability in a small sprint. You could say that Godu is better in certain aspects. You could say that Carapaz is better in certain aspects. I don't think there's any one of them who is categorically the best. I think you can really give an argument for all of them, can't you? And what about
the fact it starts with a TT? The fact it starts with a TT. I think you just got to prioritise that because which would be one of the stronger guys.
Yeah, because like you say, the TT. I mean, it's a quarter of the race, and if you're picking a pure climber and they're just not doing anything on that first stage, and they're dropping the daily GC points immediately from a get-go, that's really not going to be helping you out. So I think my team at the moment is quite more TT orientated. But speaking of other Visma-Lease bike riders, I mean, Ita Brooks, right? He's not a great time trialist, but Visma-Lease bike have such talent here. It wouldn't surprise me if they let him do his own thing. But there's also Kelderman and there's also Ben Tulett. And I would say that Tulett and Kelderman have a better TT than Brooks do. So I
We've certainly
be
seen more of
surprised.
their TT. We haven't seen Brooks on the the Visma setup yet. But I feel like even though Vingegaard doesn't tend to do a race unless he wants to win it, because that's his kind of his old school prep is he's going into every race to win it. He's not just going to ride around. But I feel like Brooks and Tulett is kind of their sort of chance to shine in their first race for Visma.
Yeah.
I mean, Kelderman, I know it's not a World Tour race, so he's not going to win. He wouldn't win if it was a World Tour race. But I mean, it's a really good opportunity for Kelderman to win a race as well, to be fair. I'm just not sure. I think there's better climbers than him in the race. So
yeah, it's hard to suss out the team orientation. And Kelderman, you look back on some of his previous TT results and you think, well, he's a fantastic time trialist. And he has done some good results, but he's not, he's probably not going to be posting like a top 5 or something. Like
he's just solid. He's just, he'll be a top 15.
Yeah, but
especially in this field, he'll probably even be top 10, top 5 even.
Yeah.
Again, it depends how they're going because it's February. So
yeah, I think that Tulett is arguably one of the more interesting ones in the race because of he has done good TTs in the past. Think back to that Giro TT, the first one, which started in Hungary. Yates won, Van der Poel second, Ben Tulett was 5th that day. And later on in that race in the TT, which Sobrero won, I think he was top 5 as well in that TT. So, and like Dan says, there's another kind of Lisa bike setup, and he's quite punchy as well. Something's drawing me to Ben Tulett as somebody to be watching out for in this race. But Irfan, what do you think of the other Visma-Lease bike riders outside of Jonas? Do you like any of these?
Actually, I don't think I'll be. I don't know. Sianis just joined the team, and he might, like you said, be left to do his own things. But I'm considering Wilco because he has a good TT and for the assistant. But there's something about Wilco Kelderman that you never know. He might just show up and having a bad day and not be there. As for Ben Tulett, I'm not really familiar with him. I've seen him, I think it was in the Giro maybe 2 years ago. He had a really good Giro in terms of TT, but he's always worked as a domestic, so I'm not really familiar with his climbing abilities. But still, I think they might be worth it for the assist with Vingegaard.
Yeah.
And the other option that you didn't have much any other option.
Yeah.
Maybe the safest one might be Wilco Kelderman.
Yeah. And somebody who did do good in this race last year was Guerrero. Even though he will lose time in the TT, he is very punchy, is very suited towards this sort of terrain, but it's that last stage which is quite concerning as well. Is Guerrero going to be able to hang with the GC boys on a 7K, 8% climb?
I feel like he's the kind of guy who wins from a breakaway. If that last stage was a Giro stage, or sorry, a Vuelta stage, he would be in the breakaway trying to win it because he wouldn't. I think it's too hard to win from or to stay with the group because he's in that annoying middle ground where he's got the punch, but he hasn't really got the pure BC attributes. So generally, no, I tend to avoid Guerrero unless it's like a one-day race or if he's cheap in a Grand Tour because I just don't see him being that consistent.
Yeah, I was feel like I had to mention him because Pedro's not here, so you have to kind of drop a
Portuguese representation.
I want to ask you guys, what do you think of Ben Tulett climbing? Have there been any time you have seen him climbing with the elite, or like I don't remember, but maybe I missed it or I just don't remember. I know there's a lot of hype around him, but There's haven't been any time I haven't really seen him somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's I think that Tullett's got some decent potential in this race. Just because I think that he held just from his kind of like ability, I think that in a finish, in a reduced finish, I think that he's got a better shot than Jonas, Kelderman, or Brooks in like a sprint, which is why I think that if he's there, they'll probably go with him. And I think he's got a decent enough TT, and I think that he can surprise on the climbing. You know, we've seen him be a mountain on the Steak before and at Ineos, but I felt like last year was an off year. So I think with the new team setup, that's why I quite like Tulett as kind of like my second favourite Visma-Lease bike rider.
Yeah, well, he was fantastic in top pro races he did for Ineos last year with his Hungary and Norway performances. So I think not that these races are in profile exactly the same, because they're not, but with the level and I mean, to be apart from his own teammate, who is obviously the favourite for the race, I think Tulett needs to be podiuming this race, to be honest, because not needs to be, sorry, it would be really good if he did podium, because it's got all the attributes that sort of it's the lead up to a Grand Tour performance, because you've got the time trial, a quirky time trial with like an uphill finish and a couple of lumps in the middle, and the sort of rolling stages where you've got to kind of control the race and finish it off potentially, and then you've also got those high mountain stages. So it's a really, I think, I mean, there's also there's two young riders on their team who are racing for the first time at pro level, so it's going to be a learning experience for them anyway. But having that sort of, I don't even know what it's one more than a Trident at the top, but I think I feel like with that too. Anyway, with his Norway and Hungary performances, I think Tulett should be. I mean, if Jonas Vingegaard is in a generous mood, you can see Tulett winning the race, to be honest.
Yeah, I just think that of all the TTs that Tullett's done, this TT sort of replicates it. But also be aware that Tulett could very well just fully just do nothing and finish 50th in GC.
He might just be full domestique. Yeah,
he
exactly.
Could literally do nothing. I mean,
I feel like that could be all of them though, because I think Kelderman's the only one who Kelderman's so consistent that he won't be really bad, but he won't be really good. Whereas Ertsbrooks and Tulett, you can imagine them just like, oh no, we're not complete novices. We'll sort of do a bit of work and just ride ourselves into this. I'm not sure which of them are doing the Giro. I think Ertsbrooks is doing the Giro, isn't he?
Yeah.
So it could be a opening for him, but then Tulett might be doing the Giro as well. So we'll see. I still think I'm going to pick three of them, because I think that one of them's going to win the race.
Keep it safe. I mean, in terms of alternatives to Tulett, I mean, Dan, you're a big Hayter fan. What are the sensations of Hayter this race? In theory, he does a good TT. He probably gets dropped on stage 2, but maybe he sprints and does well on stage 3. But you never really know with him, do you? It's the problem.
So I can imagine it. I would not be surprised with both scenarios. He wins the time trial. He wins stage 2. He wins stage 3. He's absolutely flying, and he's absolutely worth it. The opposite, he wins the TT, and we get super hyped, and then he drops on the first big test. So I'm really torn. I might end up picking both Hayter and Tarling, because I think either of them could win the time trial. But the problem with Tarling is he could win the time trial, or he probably will win the time trial because he's the world champion. But Hayter's going to be potentially in contention for potentially one reduced finish or two, depending on how he's going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Tarling wins the opening TT, gets 150 points, the GC points. You know, maybe he ends up at the end of the race a smidgen over 200 for a 12 credit rider. it's not that great. It's fine, but we're probably looking for a little bit better. And like you say, Hayter's got that higher ceiling, but is a little bit more risky. So
I think it also depends on his shape, because Tarling was domestiquing on Jebel Jais at UAE Tour a couple of years ago. So he can climb, but that was a long, consistent climb, not a sort of 7%, 8% climb. So I'm not sure Tarling will, even though I think he'll win the stage, the opening TT, I don't think he'll be worth 12.
Yeah, that's true. Also, moving down a little bit, Irfan, you were talking about some of these 10 credit riders earlier, kind of your Kwiatkowskis, Bernals, Will Barters. Who's your go-to 10 credit rider at the moment?
I think either going to be Bernal or Picanzoli.
No.
Again, Bernal, maybe it's the safest one, the one most who's highest on the GC. And I really like Davide Picanzoli, but I don't think he's worth 10 credits. A bit too much to spend on him for a young rider. He could potentially finish somewhere around 10th to 15th. So as for my team, like I think I found better option there's plenty of 6 credit riders and even 8 credit riders. But if you really want to get a 10 credit, I think it's Egan Bernal. He can, at his best, he developed his TTs as well. He could have a decent TT, but I don't really find. Okay, Will Barter has the potential of finishing the top 5 on the opening stage, and you can get the point from the general classification from him from the first stage. But otherwise, I think we won't see much of him. Castrovillo, I haven't seen him yet this season. You know that he's most likely here to be as a domestic. Raul Chapiana has been okay in the French race, and he tried some attack. He looked very lively, but this is another field. I don't think we're going to see much of him. Maybe in stage 3, he has his chance if he come up to a reduced sprint. Kwiatkowski, that's a nice option as well, and Nerukar, he's a decent time trialist. I was just looking at his result, but it's just impossible to see with EF education easy post. I told you they come here with the potential of any one of them could go up front, and it's just going to be roll the dice and see which number comes out.
Yeah. I think the 10 credits are some of the more interesting ones in this competition for me. I think Barter's very interesting. I think maybe his TT is slightly overhyped, dare I say. I think people think he's like some TT beta, but I don't think he is. I think, a top 10 for sure. But he is sort of an enigma. Yeah, I think everybody thinks of that one TT he did in the Vuelta where he came second behind Roglic.
By 1 second, yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody still thinks about that. I think Barter's a good choice.
Yeah. In his interview, I think after his win at Valenciana, he's basically saying how, he's found himself again. It feels like it's been a long time since that Vuelta TT. Was it like 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, like 4
Something
years
like that. A long time. So, I mean, I just don't know how he goes in mountains with the GT group. I actually think there's a teammate of his who is better, that is almost half the price at 6 with Javier Roman.
Yeah,
because he's already shown they did that uphill time trial at Route del Sol, and he was 15th or 16th there. So I don't know much about him, but he looks pretty solid.
Yeah, I think, wasn't he the one who, I think I remember putting a load of hype on him before the Vuelta last year? I think it was when he
4 credits there or something.
He was like 4 credits and he just comes 6 in the GC at Vuelta Burgos or something like that.
Oh, right, yeah.
But then he DNF'd after 7 days or something like that. That's not my fault. Other 10 credit riders. So there's Barter, Bernal's interesting, just from
I
the
think he's a
prospect of the nostalgia.
I think he's a steal. Like,
You think?
I really, well, he said he feels like he's back, and he was on. I think he was on the podium at the Colombian. It was either the time trial or the road race championships. I think it was the time trial because Cepeda won. So he's definitely got the engine of sorts. He's definitely going to be the leader here for Ineos. I do wonder a bit about Castroviejo though, because he often, because he sacrifices so much in the Grand Tours, he often gets to go for his home Spanish races. And and Castroviejo will probably, I would guess, top 5. Yeah, top 5 the TT potentially.
And he's a decent climber. Like he could be top 20.
Yeah, the climbs aren't that hard, so I think I would prefer to pick Castroviejo because of the TT, but I do think now could finish higher on GC potentially.
Yeah, but what about Kwiatkowski though? Because he's been in good form recently. He was top 10.
I honestly have no idea how. Oh, was he? Okay. Kwiatkowski is another one of these, like, you're just not sure. Yeah, I mean, it's like he's been such a steady Eddie for so long, and then he won that tour stage, and it was that week that pretty much everyone that was winning stages was like 30, 32 plus. Like it was the old guard. So I feel like he's going to be working for the others. But again, he's several-time Polish national champion in the time trial. So I honestly think it will just be Ineos are very, with these races, Ineos are much like, well, you know, go and put a TT in, and then pretty much whoever does well in the TT, then that's who we'll work for.
Yeah, I do think that Kwiatkowski will probably be. I think he'll be top 10 in the TT. I think Ineos probably post Kwiatkowski, Castroviejo. Like they could put 4 guys in the top 10 in the TT, to be honest with you. And then you could see Visma-Lease bike with 2 guys up there as well. Like it wouldn't be surprising if you're just seeing lots of the same jerseys. I think Kwiatkowski's got the upside of, it's a very niche upside, but if Hayter isn't like firing on all cylinders, then Kwiatkowski could hang in there and do kind of like a sprint. But like you say, Dan, we've got so much talent here.
I think Freiler is probably their best option for a sprint finish.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have a PC.
Somebody has to do.
The problem with the start list is both all the big teams, so EF, Ineos, and Visma-Lease bike. It's basically their Tour de France teams. So they're absolutely stacked, but you're not sure until you see a press release. You're not actually sure, like, well, apart from obviously Vingegaard, you're not entirely sure who their A card is, and because it's such a small race, like it's not even a pro dot pro race. It's a 2.1. So it's not even that big of a race, and they've just bought the absolute strongest lineups they possibly can.
Yeah. So we'll move on to 8 credit riders, and I'll ask you who your favorite one is. I'll go first, just in case you haven't thought of one, and maybe you want a little bit more time. So, funny enough, my favorite one, I actually quite like. It's a strange one, but I quite Pablo Castillo, because he came. We were talking about the Ruta del Sol TT, just the one single TT that happened in that race. He was 11th in that TT. And I think he was top 20 in the Figueira Champions Classic, and he was top 15 in the Classica. And I think he was top 10 maybe in the Classica Heian. Like he's just going really well at the moment for a Pro Conti rider. If he was 6 credits, he'd be straight in. But 8 credits is just a little bit like, maybe not. But there's also Johan Boo's pretty consistent as just like a top 20 GC. Cepeda, Paul Double, Pacher, Piccolo was sprinting in Tour Columbia. The other 2 Visma-Lease bike boys. What are you thinking?
My favorite scrolled past because I didn't even realize he was on this team, and that's David de la Cruz, who's on Q3 6.5. Now, David de la Cruz is well known for having a decent TT. Not winning, but it's good enough to hold him up there in GC every time. I'm pretty sure he's top 10 of the Vuelta several times. So the fact that he's got a contract late, on a small team, and he's a veteran Spanish rider, makes me think that he wants to go for this, and the team will want him to go for it. So, I mean, I haven't got him on my team because I think 8, not that it's too expensive, like it'd probably be 8 in a Grand Tour, but
yeah,
I think in terms of GC, I'd pick him. I really like Paul Double as well.
yeah,
Calzone's a weird one because he's got that Italian classics hype, but I don't think any of the stages here really suit him. I mean, he might be all right in a bunch finish, maybe, as in a reduced bunch finish, not like an actual sprinter's finish. But Cepeda, to be honest, because Cepeda surprised me by was he second or third at Ruta del Sol uphill time trial?
Yeah.
So he's clearly very good, but I mean, yeah, for me it's De La Cruz or Double were the best 8s.
Yeah, I think that Cepeda could maybe be he could top 10 maybe 2 stages and maybe come top 15 GC, something like that. But I'm not sure if there's too much quality in V8 credits. I'm not sure just who's going to really stand out.
Certainly not when you want to pack in all those big money riders.
Yeah, exactly. This midfield bit's a bit. Irfaan, who's your favourite 8 credit rider?
I think it's pretty much the same guys that you guys with. I think you guys are more familiar with Paul Double. I think he had a great race in Valenciana, was it? He finished in the top 20. And I don't know if we need to pick him or not. I think you guys will do better. And he's talk about Cepeda, and he also told about this Jambu. And I've seen these guys. He's always like in the top 20, whether it's a stage race, he's always trying around there. And he might, I'm not very, I don't really know about his CTs, but for the next stages, whether stage 2, 3, or 4, he can easily be in the top 20s in the stages. And there's one guy we haven't mentioned, and I think he deserves a mention for the season that he's having. Okay, it was only one race, he was at Oman, but I think Tarling Cabrambilla is actually on a decent form. He's been climbing, I think, around the 5th to 10th place in Oman, and he's worth a mention for an 8 rider. But pretty much, I think to be safe, I kind of like Rambo from Oscar Telescadi. At least you have a guy who can finish in the top 20 in 3 stages.
Yeah, I think there's certainly some safe kind of top 20 GC prospects here. I think that's largely what I'm seeing, is that a lot of these riders probably aren't going to be posting too high in stages, but overall GC, maybe they pick you up some points. But I certainly think there's maybe some better value in the 6 credit riders. I mean, we already alluded to Javier Romo, and we've also slightly talked about Omar Fraile. Do you think that those 2 are the best ones, Dan? Or is there anybody else who you think is worthwhile mentioning?
I mean, for breakaways, Gotson Martin usually gets in breakaways. Bizcada, pretty skiddy as well. He's usually quite a solid GC pick. There's lots of okay names, but there's no one really jumps out at me as a sort of. So I've got Fraile and Romo just because they stand out as doing well in this sort of terrain. There's a couple of those Portuguese, like Rafael Rice, has a bit of a Palmares, so he might do well in the time trial. Sandro Vera as well, Arkea. He's another guy that likes going in a breakaway. I'm not sure about much else. Yeah.
I mean, for 4 credits. He was good. I mean, speaking of Oman, was this Ivan Kobo guy in Oman, was he one of the better scoring 4 credit riders, or am I thinking of somebody else? I'm trying to remember.
No.
Hang on, let me just take a quick look.
I was going to say, now we're all looking.
Where is Where is Uzcatel in this? Why can't I find him? Kobo.
Oh,
Yeah, he was
yeah,
ninth in
Ivan.
GC at
Yeah,
Oman.
Ivan Kobo. Yeah,
Yeah, it's in
Mm.
Oman,
finished-
yeah.
He finished
Right.
10th
That's a
on
new
Green
one.
Mountain, 9th on Yeti Hills. That's actually quite
Yeah.
a decent pick, to be honest. If you're 9th in GC, considering he finished ahead of, I don't know, Zvihoff, Berkmo, Zvera, Masnada, Bookman,
Yeah.
Vienkes. I mean, it's all right. For a 6-credit rider, it's certainly not bad. It's certainly while throwing
gonna
his
do a
name
job.
in there. Yeah,
He'll do a job for you.
he might get you something. We're going to presume his TT is not great. But I think Romo is the best for sure.
Yeah.
And then from that, just take Veda, Fraile, Kobo, or something like that, or one of the breakaway guys that Dan was talking about, I think.
Yeah, these could you guys.
Yeah. 4 credit riders. Has anybody seen anything, or am I? I've currently got.
Yeah.
Have you got one?
Well, I've got a few. So they're
Yeah.
almost all from Q36.5. So you've got
Oh, right.
Fancello. Fancello
Yeah.
is a good one, I think.
Excellent one.
I've just got to remember what he did well at a race recently.
Wasn't it like
Antalya.
Torban Antalya or something like that?
He was in he did well
Yes,
in
Torban
Antalya.
Salia. He was third on the. He was in the breakaway, but he came third. That was kind of a punchy,
Form is
hard.
Last season.
So yeah, him and Joey Roscoff, purely because he always goes into breakaway.
Yeah, that's very true.
I can't remember which race it was. I feel like it was Swiss last year or Romandy, and he was just hoovering up KOM points. Just
Yeah.
because he's he has such a big pedigree. Well, he's a good time trialist as well. So he has a pedigree in the time trial because he was at BMC whilst they were dominating time trials. So he could do well, potentially a top 10 on or top 15 on stage 1. But I do think he'll be in the breakaways because there's so many KOM points up for grabs in this race. So I honestly think you could do very well just stacking the top end and then just filling your budget with 4s who are going to have to go in the breakaway to show themselves.
And just stack up on the same team.
Yeah, Samitier is there as well for Movistar.
Movistar.
He's always I swear he always wins like the KOM jersey at a small race like Burgos or something just before the Vuelta, and he gets super hyped and then does nothing at the Vuelta.
Yeah.
Classic Movistar rider. I'm intrigued by Callum Johnson, to be honest, because he's on Caja Rural, Scottish guy. So I don't know what he's. Enzo Pellegrini Rupama, because he's a time trial specialist.
Yeah.
So he could do something as well.
Yeah. I think Clément Davy is actually quite good at a time trial as well.
Yeah, they've got quite a few young time trialists at FDJ.
Like he, last year, 12th at Grano de Nation, but then like Tour of Polonia, he's 22nd. I know it's not, it's not great, but when you consider who he's probably up against, Luxembourg, 14th, National Championships of France, he's 6th. If you remove all of the tough competition who he's with in those races, maybe he's creeping towards the top 10 in this race. And then, that gets you 30 plus a daily GC points or something. Maybe that's just all right. But I think maybe Dan's strategy of going with just stack up on the same team and hope they go in a breakaway, that might be, it's a bit more risky, but you're not really risking too much. When we're setting the benchmark.
The type of team that it's the type of Q65, Q36.5 are the kind of team that kind of have to go in the breakaways because, well, they're the sort of reincarnation of the Dimension Data team because it's Doug Ryder, so they'll know what they're doing. And I mean, Fancello looks like a really good prospect. David de la Cruz is good. They've just got some decent names there that I think are being priced lower than they are actually quality-wise because they're on 36.5, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Irfan do you have a favorite 4-credit rider, or have we already covered it?
There's a focal rider that I don't want anyone to miss out. Is the same rider that Dan said, Anselu.
Yeah,
I think that can sprint, and I don't think there's except Ethan Hater, I don't think there's many sprinters in this race or stage 3. But there's also one rider. Actually, he's on 6 credit, and I want to attract everybody's attention on is Giovanni Lunardi. He's from Cometa. What's it called now? Pretty Cometa.
Right.
Lunardi. Giovanni Lunardi.
You just missed him. He's just at the bottom of 6.
bottom of 6.
Pretty Cometa.
Better.
Oh yeah,
There he is.
Yeah.
These are. I like. Yeah. You've got.
Might
You've got.
be the second
Go
best
on.
sprinter in the race.
yeah. I mean, he did a solid for me during Community at Valenciana, but
I think there was one stage after Milan, he was third or something after Jonathan Milan, and that there was one race, there was one stage. I think Milan was dropped or he had a mechanical, and it was a lumpy stage, and it quite resembles stage 3 of the Gran Camino. So for 6 credit, you might get someone who's gonna probably finish in the top 5 of one stage.
yeah,
Whether he's better than the other option, I don't think so. Rabia Homo is a must have.
Yeah.
And there's also actually 2 riders from Arkea. There's Alessandro Veri, like we mentioned, and Brett is Fistad Parts, and
Yeah.
that's the wrong rider, and he did well in the Tour de l'Avenir, and we just saw him in Tour of Oman. I think he finished in the top 15 or 20 as well.
Yeah.
The must have is Ravi Homo.
Yeah, he's definitely the best one.
And Fanselu.
Yeah, and Fanselu. Brilliant. Well, I'll reveal my team, who I've got at the moment. As always, we go through these talks, and then I always get to this point, and I always feel like I want to change my team, because I think that Guerrero I'd probably change out for somebody else now. Let's just go with Keldman for now. Something like this, maybe. Have Jonas. It doesn't have to be Kwiatkowski, could be Bernal. Going with the kind of Visma-Lease bike, Ineos Grenadiers split, and then kind of like the best of the 6s and of the 4, which I like. I got Tarling in there just for kind of a TT safety, I suppose. But you could equally go with a Hater and something like that. Just to if you wanted to go a little bit more risky with that. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't included any 8-credit riders because like I mentioned earlier, I think they're all just very much. There's a few just top 20 prospects in there, but you can get that in the 6-credit riders as well. So why would I spend the 2 credits extra? 8 credits is always just such a hard place to go, I think. Dan, who's on your 9-man team at the moment? Obviously, very subject to change.
Yeah, it's a list of. I wouldn't say it's similar to yours at all. There's a few common names in there, but it's Vingegaard, Brooks, Garcia Piena, Tulett, Tarling, Freile, Romo, Vancello, Roscoff. So Garcia Piena is really in there because I think he will do well in the time trial, and then he did well at. I think he was second or third best to Pedersen at Bessèges. Was it? No, it's Provence. Sorry. So he's a strong rider. He can ride in. Yeah, he's a strong guy over the terrain. But I might end up shifting that about because I might have too many expensive jumbo in there because I feel like I need to put Hater in there and potentially a Bernal and a Castroviejo. And I'm probably going to switch Freile out for Lenardi because for me it's not much of an either or, but it's Freiler's assist points versus Leonardi potentially top 3 to top 5ing one of those rolling stages.
Yeah, good reasoning. Irfan, do you want to reveal who's on your 9-man team at the moment?
I have Jonas Vingegaard,
Uh-huh.
Lenny Martinez, Wilco, Cancelo, Rabia Romo, Giovanni Leonardi, and Alessandro Viri.
Yeah.
And I'm left with 18 credits for 2 riders. And right now I have Ethan Hayter and Uma Riley.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right strategy. So I'm not. I still have like 18 credits to put on 2 riders.
Yeah.
I don't know yet what I'm going to do with it. It's either being safe and just spend 12 credits on Joshua Tarling, who will not do worse than top 3 in the first stage. But that's pretty much it that he can do. I have the option like that's why I want to ask you about Ben Tulett. I'm considering him, but just I think about it. How to spend 18 credits on 2 riders.
Yeah.
Sure about it.
Well, those are our 9-man teams at the moment, of course. And we've recorded this a little bit earlier, so we're not entirely as certain, just so we can get it out in time so that people can watch this and dissect it and integrate it into their teams if they so want to. But let us know what you're thinking in the comments section down below. What kind of 9-man team are you thinking of going with? Are you going with Jonas? Are you not going with Jonas? Put it all in the comments section down below. And all there's left to say, stay safe out there, and we will see you in the next episode, which might be a Super Classico or it might be a Paris-Nice. Who knows? But we'll see you there.